What's up? What's up, Instagram and Facebook? What's going on, 1776 Nation, Dear Jonhson Country, and also Rattletrap 1776 Nation. If I'd have known I was going viral 2.5 years ago, I'd have made everything cohesive, but it didn't work out that way, so I got a few different kind of names, brands, and trademarks. But anyway, I'm not going to be on here long. Most of the time my videos are 2 to 4 hours long, but I do want to get up early in the morning and try to get in the woods since there will be just a little over a month left of deer season. So I plan on spending a lot of my January and early February in the woods. So anyway, it's just a little brush up tonight just because of the messages I'm receiving, which are all good, you know, all the questions and things of that nature. And so now's the time to kind of mellow out, have a little fun as we roll into the new year, which I cannot believe. I don't know where this year went. Boy, where did 2024 go? Oh my goodness, where did it go? Wow, time does fly. They always say after 35, it's just a quick hill, downhill. So a lot of the questions I'm receiving still are just kind of like housekeeping kind of questions. A lot of people are trying to brush up on, the massive amounts of material, and then also still differentiating from the informational warfare that takes place out there, because there's a lot of people who aren't just frauds. They're not necessarily just frauds and scammers. A lot of these people are just plain either dumb, ignorant, or brown nosers, posers, and or all the above. If you notice this week, a certain person was removed of X, formerly Twitter, from their verification badge, and they threw a hissy fit over it, and they got all upset, bent out of shape about it. All right, well, President Trump's already warned people way back. He said we need to have an amendment to Section 230. All right. And then also a part of another act that he mentioned that he would invoke way back, which was a proclamation, which we're going to talk about that in a minute. And this is what I'm going to talk about all night tonight. Well, not all night, but you know what I'm saying. But there's two parts to the 1798 Aliens Act. It's also a sedition act. All right. Some people try to separate that. But the 1798 Seditions Act and Aliens Act, it basically punished people for printing stuff that shouldn't have been printed. This is why I tell people all the time to listen to President Trump. Not everybody around President Trump are good people. Do they mean him harm? No. But a lot of people are still failing to comprehend that we're in an operation. All right, I keep it handy, always. So either President Trump is the most brilliant man on earth, all right, and part of a strategic plan and strategic operation, which I can more than clearly outline with laws and orders, but it takes a lot of reading, a lot of studying, and a lot of comprehension skills to piece it all together. Which is why you'll see resistance out there from people. Any resistance I've faced the last 2.5 years are by people who don't read, they don't study, they can't comprehend. They'll take one little sliver of something I talk about and go, well, it don't mean this. And they don't know what it means, period. Now, not everybody's gifted either to have the memory like I do, to be able to take multiple pages. We're talking about thousands and thousands and thousands of pages, to skim over it, find the key pieces out of it, but then also put it together in a chronological blueprint that forms an outline, chronological, again, of an operation that requires someone to sit up in an aircraft, metaphorically speaking, and look down on the 40,000 foot view and see the whole thing. Most of these people can't even focus on one little sliver. All right. Now I'm talking about the people I get resistance from. I'm not talking about you, the people, we, the people, you, the people, you, the patriots. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about the people who try to get in and still take your attention, and wedge propaganda, drama, and nonsense and malarkey in there when they have ulterior motives. Their motives are not for the grander good of humanity. It's not for the grand good of society. It's for whatever their motives and agenda are. That's where the information warfare is, which also ties into a spiritual warfare, which really it's the polar opposite. It's actually a spiritual warfare with an information warfare, with this being the controlling factor. These people do not have a foundation. Their motives and everything are not good. All right. So this whole thing, once again, either he's the most brilliant man on the planet with a massive, massive group of people who have put this together. It's an operation. You got to look at it like an operation. That's what 45-47, 45 through 47, 45 continuous 47, 45 I never went anywhere 47. Or what they were charging of President Trump all through the early year, even though I know media are under a wartime code, but for people who don't know that, people who don't read and study and comprehend all of it together, people who don't know that, they charged that President Trump and Biden, even though he's not real and he's not president by laws and orders, not by opinion, but by laws and orders, he's not president. But for people who don't know that, the two charges made against those two men were at their ages, at the time that they would take office, January the 20th, 2025, would a 78-year-old man serving 4 years or an 82-year-old man serving 4 years have the cognitive skills and cognitive ability to run this nation? I'm pretty sure putting a damn dash on your ball cap saying I'm 45, 46, and 47 on April the 2nd, 2023, I'm pretty sure that's a pretty good case that if this wasn't a strategic operation and a strategic plan by laws and orders, I'm pretty damn sure that that would be a cognitive disability. That would be a cognitive problem. By saying, hey, April the 2nd, 2023, I'm putting a ball cap out. I'm going to sell this as a donation. Hey, you can donate $50 and you get this ball cap. I'm pretty sure putting this out a year and 7 months before November the 5th, 2024 would be a cognitive problem. Something that simple, if people would look at things simple and remove all the trash, the garbage, the rhetoric, and all these people out there. So, there's four ways the military pairs with federal. A lot of people do not realize that the military is separate from the federal government. That's where most people struggle right out the gate. You think that the military and the government are all the same. They're not. They're separate entities. All right. Now, the military, it's mainly general high-ranking officers generally who know that, but people like me who listen to my grandfathers before I ever went in the military, listen to my grandfathers, my great-uncles, my dad, my uncle, those men already knew that. I grew up with that foundation of knowing that. So for the people who don't, that's okay if you're just a but when whoever you is out there creating resistance towards me, that you, not you, the people, that's the you I talk about when I say that. Now, I'm telling you this 2.5 years later. I've said this before in videos, but some people still take these videos and treat it as if I'm talking to you and you only. And I'm like, no, it applies to whoever who feels guilty. If you feel guilty, then you might need to hear it that way. But throughout the last 2.5 years, there have been people in my comment boxes, that ain't true, this ain't that, and this ain't that. They no more try to explain. They'll say little tiny excerpts. But guess what happens? Because people love drama, people will tend to follow the drama and the one person who maybe when you go to their profile, oh, they're in uniform, or they got all these accolades, and you can see all their, went to school at Harvard, went to school at Yale, got a law degree at Princeton, and blah, 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 blah. And people gravitate towards titles and entitlement and positions, which is what got us in this position in the first place. You realize the whole mission is to drain the swamp of entitlement, titles. President Trump says this all the time. He says, I don't give a shit if you're a Republican. I don't give a shit who you are. It's all about titles, entitlement, the establishment, the Washington establishment. That's where we have a lot of hang-ups right now. People are still brainwashed and conditioned to follow the run-of-the-mill, to follow all the titles, all the entitlement, versus going, you know what? Why does this guy have almost 1 million followers? And all he shows are .mil, .gov, and he has 2 to 4 hour videos, breakdowns, all right? Got multiple posts where they require a part 1, part 2, part 3, part 4, or see more. And when you click on that see more, all of a sudden, whoop, massive post, all right? Then you'll see people, I saw this 2 years ago, saw comments about, oh, if he has to say that, if he has to talk longer than 30 minutes, then this all hogwash. That is why we got in the position we got in. Everybody wants a 5-star filet mignon from a freaking $100 microwave. That's what's wrong with this nation. That's why we got where we got, because of that mindset. And these people who say that are actually depowering themselves. They're not empowering themselves, they're depowering themselves. Plus, they're speaking negative. Which, anytime you speak negativity, you're probably going to be the recipient of that. So, there's 4 ways the military pairs with federal laws. Only 4. Pretty simple. Executive orders, national emergencies, proclamations, and treaties. You know what those 4 have in common? They all have to be signed and or declared by the president. It is that freaking simple. Now, going back to 2016, there's 2 things I tell people. One, you got to go really study this one booklet. It's called the Special Operations Command Unconventional Warfare Pocket Guide. Go study it. Now, there's a lot of other publications you need to read, but that's a pretty good start right there to get your feet wet, as I say this. That pocket guide was the Special Operations Command as a whole, not just one little publication. This is the new publication for unconventional warfare that was published April 2016. The very next month, the United States Supreme Court, not Trump's Supreme Court, forgive me, President Trump, for calling you Trump, but that's what they will say. The liberals, the nays, the negatives, the doubters, the haters, they all use his name like that. His name's President Trump. Get it correct. Wartime President Trump. Commander, Supreme Commander President Trump. Get it right. All right. In May 2016, the United States Supreme Court of Obama, who is not worthy of that title, of any title, by the way, not worthy of president, not worthy of commander-in-chief, not worthy of that. Never once did I ever say that when I was in uniform and or in service during the time that I served under Obama. But now that I'm out, he is not worthy of those titles. All right. But Obama's Supreme Court in May 2016, even though it's not supposed to be called that, they are the United States Supreme Court no matter who appoints them. But because people do that, let's make sure to clarify, especially since liberals do that, let's make sure to clarify this was not President Donald John Trump's Supreme Court. It was Obama's Supreme Court who clarified in the Military Justice Act of 2016 that military jurisprudence is separate from federal jurisprudence. So that tells you right there, the court of law, the courts of law, the laws and the orders of the military are not the same as the federal laws and orders. There's 4 ways they pair. Once again, executive orders, root word of that, executive branch, right? President Trump's sole role, duty, purpose, obligation, responsibilities is the chief executive officer of the executive branch. Executive orders, proclamations, which is a presidential proclamation, national emergencies requires a president, and then also treaties. That's also found in the Constitution. See, we got a problem in this nation by liberals especially. Liberals only know the word Constitution. They know nothing about it. Then we got a lot of Republicans who are all 4th of July but don't know shit about the Declaration of Independence. Don't know anything about it. Don't know any word from it. Don't know what it means, and where do we get the authority to overthrow such government that goes against its foundation and set a new one and establish new guards for our security. We've got a problem in this nation by people who are just all this, all about their resume, all about their accolades, all about what they've done in a man-made sector, all established by a man, that don't mean jack diddly doo-doo at the end of the day. I have a master's degree from Colorado State University, right almost near 4.0. It don't mean jack diddly doo-doo. It doesn't mean a thing. It's a piece of paper that hangs on a wall that tells me that I passed their curriculum set out by certain professors during that time period. It don't mean anything else under that. It don't tell me when I need to order more books. It don't tell me how much to set the book cost for. It don't tell me any of that. It don't tell anybody anything of that nature. That all comes right here. Your Department of Education is right here. You don't have to be a lawyer to know the law. You have to be a lawyer to practice the law, but you don't have to be a lawyer to know the law. You don't have to be a constitutional anything to know the damn Constitution. All right, you don't have to be a Constitution anything to know the Declaration of Independence. I mean, this is how dumb, idiotic, and crazy our society has gotten. When you see rhetoric out there like that, and then you see little trolls and people who are planted by people who are trying to be, or say they're big, you see these plants. We are in a process of draining the swamp for a reason. Why are people looking like it? Why are people trying to duplicate that? All right, so there's a particular person out there that I'm about to expose even more, all right, to the people. They don't know when, and I'm not going to tell you when I'm going to do it. But this particular person set in on me. Set in on me. On me. Nobody else. Set in on me. Never heard of them in my life before. Never heard of them. But they set in on me. And they all linked together with a group of people. And I'm going to hose and expose these frauds. All right. But just because this one particular person was told to leave my name out of their mouth by JAG, all right, proper authorities, but they didn't do that. And there I see this fraud who's in a uniform, who is a disgrace and a traitor to the United States military, violating multiple Department of Defense regulations and their branch regulations, doing what they're doing. They're over there in a little bitty tiny thing saying that, oh, well, a continuation, there's multiple national emergencies that have been continued. That's just what happens. And there's one that the whole world knows about. That is the problem we have right there. Are little bitty prima donna daisies who think that they're a dandelion thinking they're a daisy. They're a dandelion thinking they're a rose. All right? First off, it's not anybody's business when you're active duty military to be on social media trying to correct anything, but much less one person. All right, but while we're on executive orders, national emergencies, and proclamations, which is the topic, I'm gonna troll this person because for whatever reason, I think they're a homosexual. I think they're actually gay. For some reason, they just set in on me. They don't go after anybody else. But this old dude, he loves the hell out of some Derek Jonhson because he got my name in his mouth anytime he turns around. And thank God that's all he's going to ever have in his mouth by me. All right. Piece of shit is what this dude is. And I know I have family who don't like when I get slang, but this person is an absolute piece of shit to society. And I know there's a lot of you out there that don't like that kind of language, but you're going to have to get over it because they are nothing but a piece of shit. They're a disgrace, and they're what we call a shitbag in the military. And everybody in the military knows that terminology. That's exactly what this person is a piece of shit. All right. And now I know how Davy Crockett felt years ago when he told a group of people in Tennessee, you may all go to hell, I'll go to Texas. That's exactly how I feel. Of course, already in Texas, already been planted there, but still, just for the fun of it, this person, you can go to hell. Just like President Trump said the other day, I will have to deal with God on the flip side because of how I feel about this particular person. When I was in the military, I never once talked about Obama. Not one time. Everybody who's been around me, family members and friends, knows I never once said anything about the president and the commander-in-chief. Not one time. Because you're under an oath, and then you're supposed to leave everything aside of what you're doing, no matter what it is, and your focus is to be on your oath that you took under Title 10, Section 502, straight to the military. Everything else is put aside. Social media, all this stuff, supposed to be aside. But especially if you're married and you got kids, where are your priorities? And then the military. Your role in the military is to focus on, once again, that oath, and then also whatever role, whatever position you are, whatever rank you are in the military, that is what you're supposed to focus on. So, saying that, one little excerpt now, got a little bitty post this long, misleading 2,500 people was the last time it said it viewed, that many people viewed. 2,500 people. Now, when I went viral, 9 people watched me live when I went viral. 9 people. Now, look what 9 people turned into. 9 people turned me into 900,000 followers, give or take, somewhere in there. I'm not about the numbers and the followers, but I'm proving a point. 9 people put me right here. And this freaking clown has 2,500 views, which is not a lot. Once you get to the 900,000 or you get a lot of followers, that's not a lot of views. But it's the principle that this person's role, duty, and job is not to be anywhere remotely close to social media saying that, but also misleading people. All right? Telling me I'm not a lawyer, but then turn around and trying to correct me, and they're not a lawyer. And that's liberal logic right there. Liberal logic. Because it ain't logic. So, an executive order, you got to know what kind of executive order it is. This is where people struggle. And that's what I tell people all the time. Wherever you are in your life, if you're watching me, then you're here for a reason. All right, there's that. It depends on your level of knowledge on the verbiage, the definitions, the vocabulary, whatever terms you want to call it. It's going to depend on your degree of how much you know what these are. If you don't know what they are, like an executive order or a proclamation or a national emergency, if you don't know what those entities are, then you're not going to be able to make them applicable whenever I'm using them in the context of this executive order 1384 and this executive. You're not going to understand that. So therefore, wherever you are in your walk, you have to go read those basic principles and basic formulas of that. Then once you know those, then you take the next step up and then you piece this all together. But this one particular person said, oh, he only takes little snippets. Anybody who knows me, I don't take snippets. Anybody who knows me personally, for that matter, even outside of military and government, I don't talk in short talks. When I'm telling a story, people are go like, dang, It took you an hour to tell how you went to the woods this morning and you got in your deer stand, and because I tell where I pulled up and my truck was doing this and I pulled here and then I walked down this little road here, or I rode here and I went here and I climbed here. Anybody who knows me knows I don't give little short snippets. But I'm telling you right now, there's going to be some people who are going to be on hot ice come this. I'm not going to tell when I'm releasing the video, but I'm pouring the coal on this year. This whole New Year, New Me bullshit. Oh yeah, we're going to see what kind of New Year, New You whenever the evidence drops. Whenever I show everything, we're going to see what kind of 2025. Oh, you think you're a patriot? You think you're going to skate right on through with President Trump? You think you're just going to brown nose and pose right on through and skate under? Ain't happening. I'm the wrong one to mess with. I am going to show everybody everything. Because I ain't got nothing to hide. That's the worst thing that a liar and a thief can do, is mess with someone with a memory like mine and someone who doesn't have an image to maintain. All right? So, executive orders, you have an executive order that stands alone. It is an executive order for a reason. Executive. Hear the root word to it. Executive order. The chief executive officer of the executive branch, which is the president, issues an executive order. Unless it's revoked or it's terminated, it is active. Now, there's executive orders with national emergencies attached to them. In them. However you want to term it. An executive order with a national emergency. The national emergency has a 2-year automatic termination clause to it unless it is continued. Which is why I tell all the time it makes no sense why Joe Biden, if he was real, and if he was really president, it makes no sense whatsoever. And this is what this clown and other clowns who have tried to come after me, which they all come after me with lies, misinformation, and fraud. First off, frame up felonies, have nothing to do with laws and orders. All right, but none of them can tell why Joe Biden has continued 8 executive orders with 8 national emergencies by President Trump 4 years in a row, and he continued 11 executive orders with 11 national emergencies for 2 years in a row. Now, the average mind out there is going to do the subtraction on that and go, well, sounds like he's really president because he didn't continue 3 more. No, that ain't how it works. There's one little key thing that's an outlier that shows that Joe Biden is not president by law. It's called a Presidential Emergency Action Document, which are a series of pre-made by the Department of Justice executive orders, national emergencies, proclamations for the president to sign really fast and present to the Congress. And there's more than enough evidence to show around all of that one key thing that Joe Biden is not real and he's not president. But then when you go over to the federalregister.gov, his quote-unquote revokings and continuations are not where they're supposed to be. Also, Proclamation 9994, which was President Trump's verbal national emergency, not in an executive order, but in a proclamation on March 13, 2020, it was jointly terminated. But when you read the actual House resolution, it don't talk initially about Biden in there. But even if it did, it wouldn't matter. That's where most people, that's where you got to separate your emotions. You got to get really into strategic thinking and critical thinking and separate that, because even if they look like he signed it, that's perfect. All right, because COVID was a deep state retaliation move, biological chemical threat. It is what it is. President Trump recently, in one of his recent speeches in October, November, said he's going to hold China accountable for the flu, the Chinese virus. All right, they did this. All right, who has their hand in the cookie jar of China? The real Joe Biden. There's a House report and a judicial committee who's already put all this together. All you people have to do is be patient. I know it sucks to wait this long, but you got to be patient. It has to be done the right way, has to be done lawfully, but they already have $27 million tied in to Hunter and Joe with China and Ukraine, and $8 million of unpaid loans and all kinds of other money. You got to chill out. You just got to chill. I realize I'm in the same boat. I wish it was now. You got it? You got the evidence? Let's go. This is an operation once again. They're not just cleaning out a few big names that you've seen and that you know. They're cleaning out a lot of people and their rings and all of their organizations and these alliances. That's what this whole thing's been about. That's where people are struggling and failing. And then you got little scrawny turds out there who are trying, they just want a name and they want a face. They want money. That's what they want. They're money driven. They're money hungry, greedy bastards is what they are. That's all they are. They want this. So when I release the video, you better stop following these frauds. They're trash. They're frauds. They're pathetic scumbags. They're deep state closet rats. So the executive order with the national emergency onto it makes no sense why Joe Biden would extend, which is actual continuing, 8 executive orders with 8 national emergencies declared by President Trump. It makes no sense at all. And if you go look at everything where it's supposed to be, your executive orders, your proclamations, and other presidential documents, Joe Biden has not done one single thing presidential to do with federal and military. He's not done one damn thing. Not a thing. So why don't these people who always come after me, how come they don't explain that? How come they never show that Joe hasn't actually done anything whatsoever? Now, to the surface level people, why is he sending money to Ukraine and all this other shit? That's just shit. It's just words that you can't prove. All right? I can't prove it as far as the actual transition and the wiring. However, I can prove by laws and orders of the military first, paired with federal, that none of this stuff has taken place like the media has portrayed, which is the number one problem with people. People are still following Fox News, CNN, and all this other stuff, which President Trump calls fake news. Yes, he shares Laura Ingraham. Yes, he'll share Tucker and all these other people through the years it's been on there, but it's because they're a part of a network on a contract. All right, he's not doing it because it's Fox and all these other things. That's where people struggle. But it makes no sense whatsoever why Joe Biden would continue 8 executive orders with 8 national emergencies, especially 3 of them. The Executive Order 13818, all right, makes no sense whatsoever. Executive Order 13848, election interference especially, that one makes really no sense. Why Joe Biden would continue that? Because that one is the one that captures all your election interference, the trials, the courts, the lies, the fraud, the scams, the misinformation, all of that during an election year. All right, that plus the ballot boxes, that one executive order makes no sense why Joe Biden would continue that executive order. Makes no sense. When it has a 2-year automatic termination, all he had to do was let it automatically terminate. So why did he continue that? Then Executive Order 13959. That's the one that froze all the assets that you'll find over on the OFAC.gov. You'll find that on the, all 2,500, I think it's up to about 2,800 pages now of names. 2,800 pages of names, not 2,800 names, 2,800 pages of names where they have their assets frozen. That's why you've seen Zuckerberg all of a sudden donate to President Trump. That's why you've seen Bezos donate to President Trump. All these people that were liberals before have turned. They've twisted, which is part of the special operation. This is all special operations. It's all unconventional warfare, all irregular warfare. And everything that's been invoked recently, all tie back into Title 10, Title 50, unconventional warfare, irregular warfare. It's all there. What's not all there are people out there, their hearts, their motives. That's what's not all there. And it's an absolute atrocity and a disgrace to every veteran, especially when it's an active duty soldier who was totally disgracing the uniform, totally disgracing all veterans, totally. But it's an atrocity when people do not want to seek to understand but also read while someone is so passionate, because it's a military operation, military laws and orders. Put together right here. That is what's operating this whole thing. So a proclamation. This is another key thing. Proclamations. President Trump has made multiple proclamations right in front of all of you. And you thought those were rallies. You thought those were campaign speeches. Those were all proclamations by law. Because the president has to make proclamations. So, once you learn the verbiage, once you learn the terminology, once you learn the glossary, once you learn the index, once you learn all the key words, and then you go back and watch it, you'll hear everything that I heard all along the way, which is what we call decoding it. But you don't need fancy terms like that. Every one of those speeches were proclamations, because he had key excerpts in every speech that tied back in to a law and to an order and something that was about to take place. For example, great example. All right, Texas border. The Texas border is one of the most key visuals to show you that Donald John Trump, respectfully, is a wartime commander. By military laws, military orders, military regulations, military customs, paired with executive orders, national emergencies, and proclamations. All requiring the president. All right, so something else that tipped me off this week, and I love Elon, from what I know. All right, it ain't him, it's the community notes. But on one of my posts on X, the community note strikes. It says, that Executive Order 13912 and 13919 canceled, said they expired was the terminology. Said expired because of Proclamation 9994 was terminated. That's false. All right, when you go read Executive Order 13912, it talks about the National Emergencies Act, and then it says in furtherance of Proclamation 9994. It means that's an advancement of. It's an extra. You don't just because that one little thing is in that executive order does not mean it cancels that executive order. President Trump issued Proclamation 9994 on March the 13th, 2020. Executive Order 13912 was signed into law March 27th, 2020. He clearly separated those on purpose. See, that's where community notes fail, and guess who community notes are? People. Guess what those same people are? The same as fact checkers on Facebook, who are nothing but atrocious trash. All of them. They don't know laws. They don't know orders. They take one little snippet, and their explanation back is this small. When my posts, a lot of my posts are 2 and 4 hours videos, they take one little snippet, and their little excerpt back, their explanation is that long. Just like this trash of a person calling themselves a soldier. What a disgrace, the Space Force. Delta 4, you're all a piece of shit too. All of you. Your chain of command, you're all trash. You're all garbage. All right, you need to relieve the duty, just like all these 250 other commanders have been relieved of duty since June 2017. Who was the president? Yeah, there's a lot of people still in the military that need to be removed of duty. They're atrocious and they're trash. And the same thing with fact checkers, all of it. It needs to go. We need to empower people again. Empower people. Everything I give you people, if you go read it and study it the way I do, that's why I have the followers I have, because I provide the tools and say, hey, see if you read what I'm reading. See if this makes sense to you to put it all together the way it all goes together, and see what you think. That's why I have the followers I have. It's not about the numbers and the followers as far as the numbers to me. I don't keep up with that stuff. But that's why I have the platform I have. And if these people would realize that, if these people would actually stop worrying about me and start focusing on whatever you believe in, God, or whatever, but focus on yourself, and then go focus on the laws and the orders of this land. They're there for a reason. They're there for us to interpret. They're made public for us. So that's what's taking place. That's why I have the followers I have. And the Texas border is the most visual of all of them. There's a few others, but that's the most visual to show that all these clowns, all these individuals, fact checkers and community notes, they're lazy as hell and they're wrong. Wrong, 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 as President Trump says. So on the Texas border, you've heard me talk about it, but briefly again, President Trump's at the border. The same day they said Joe Biden, quote unquote, was in Brownsville, Texas, with 2 C-32s that did not fly with a call sign. I say it all the time, but SAM call sign, Special Air Mission. Joe Biden, anytime they said Joe Biden or Kamala was anywhere, they did not fly with a SAM call sign, presidential call sign. But all the Department of Defense aircraft are flying with the presidential call sign. Go figure. Wow. All right. So the border. The border is a federal issue. It's not a state issue. It's federal. Too many people get to thinking about Texas, Arizona, New Mexico, California. You forget about our northern border though, don't you? It's just as equal. They can come in up through there just as much as they do from Mexico, right? So it's a federal issue. It's not state. But even outside the border, the only person who can federalize the reserve components, the National Guard, the active duty, is the President of the United States of America. There's multiple different sections under Title 10 that do that. Section 12301, 12302, 12304, 123405, 12305. All right, there's multiple, but for the sake of time here, President Trump, Executive Order 13912, March 27th, and Executive Order 13919, April 30th, 2020. Federalize 1 million reserve components to active duty. All right. Invoking sections Title 10, sections 12302, and sections 12304, which are your reserve components. Reserve only serve one mission. They're not state and federal. They're federal only. And the week before President Trump went to Texas, the state of Arkansas sent their National Guard to Texas. The week after, the state of Nebraska sent their National Guard to Texas. That means they're federalized. This took place February 29, 2024, in this calendar year. Of the year that liberals especially, and this clown and all the others associated with these clowns, all right, say that President Trump's a former president. But he's standing at the border with the governor of Texas and the adjutant general of Texas, which is the commanding officer of all the armed forces of the state of Texas, or whatever state an adjutant. Every state has an adjutant. So that adjutant general is the commanding officer of all of the armed forces of each state. And there's President Trump at the border now in an election cycle. All right, this is an election year. All right, so even if it wasn't an election year, that would be a violation of his own Executive Order 13848 with the national emergency, which would be election interference, because it is an election year. It would also be a violation of national security, because it wouldn't matter what you think about Joe Biden, but if Joe Biden was real, President Trump down at the border in February 2024, that would have been a violation of national security, because it's a military operation, and he told the whole world on TV it's a military operation twice. So there would be cases where the Democrats and liberals could absolutely charge President Trump, if he was a former president, with obstruction, but also election interference, all right, which is a federal law as well, and then invoke the 25th Amendment on him from ever serving again because of national security causes. That's why that's important, what you witnessed that day. You witnessed a chain of command rank structure. That's why I get pissed, and I am intertwining this video tonight with this piece of shit who calls himself an active duty soldier, who I'm sick and tired of, never wanted in my life, never heard of them before. They're a piece of effing shit. That's what they are. That's why this stuff is serious. We have got to get rid of trash like that out of our military. It's trash. Whew. It matters because of lives, all right? It matters because it's military principles, military laws, military orders, military regulations, and military customs, all right? It's really that simple. It don't get any more difficult than that. It's not difficult. And these people have a lot of explaining to do. He and his unit. Delta 4, you have a lot of explaining to do. While you listened to Jag and you didn't take anything into consideration whatsoever. And you got your boy still out there on the internet trying to, married with kids, got an obligation to taxpayers here, and he's still out there yakking away. So, guess what? Every time he talks, statute of limitations open up and it extends out further. You want to talk about continuations, douchebag? Ha! You want to talk about extensions? You freaking twat waffle? You want to talk about continuations? Every time you talk about me, that statute of limitations just keeps going right on out. And if I ever do decide to pursue charges, don't be saying I'm trying to end your career like you put out on text messages out. Oh, he's trying to end my career. You're the one that came after me, Jose. It's all you, bro. This is what you wanted, so I'm going to give it to you. All right, because you're trash, and you're no different than all these liberals out there who need to be exposed. All right, and also rhino Republicans who got exposed. The Texas border, President Trump standing there with the adjutant general and the governor of Texas. The adjutant general reports to the state chief executive, the governor, unless the National Guard are federalized by Title 10. Now explain to me why that is so difficult for people to comprehend. President Trump federalized the National Guard, the reserve components, the active duty. The only orders, hear me out, this is why this soldier looks like a traitor. The only orders right now in law that are to do with the National Guard being federalized while they're out of their state jurisdictions every single day, the only orders right now with the National Guard federalized. Come on, community notes. Come on, fact checkers. Come on, twat waffles. The only executive orders out there right now with federalization of the National Guard, or Executive Order 13912 and Executive Order 13919, March 27, 2020 and April 30th, 2020 by Donald John Trump. And we got an active duty clown who's getting on the internet trying to mislead people. Not his role, not his duty, none of that. So just think, if we got that with one, think how many more there's out there. And then look at all these others out there, all of these podcasters, independent podcasters, right? They've taken everything that I talk about and twist it. Like the Department of Defense Directive 5240.01 from September 27, 2024. Not that long ago. All these independent podcasters saying that is Joe Biden weaponizing the military to go against the people. No, we don't. And the military would never do that. So here you got a clown over here who's totally butchering laws and orders. Not even supposed to be talking about them. Then you got all these other clowns who are twisting it all. No wonder the people are confused. No wonder people don't know who to trust. No wonder. But the way you solve that, ladies and gentlemen, is you go read everything that I put out, all the .govs, all the .mils, and in the chronological order of how I put them. You go read all that. You decide for it. That's why I have the followers I have. That's why I have so many female followers as well. I give all the females a shout out all the time. All you ladies, all you women, all right? I had a lady message me this past week, and I'm pretty sure she'd be okay with me saying this because she said it. She said, it's amazing how all of us who don't really look like we would associate together, all right, because of our different lifestyles, but it's amazing how we all think alike and how we're all together during this time period for humanity. All right? And if you looked at this lady and you looked at me, polo, buckle, cowboy hat, and you looked at her, you'd think probably liberal, hippie, free spirit, whatever. And see, what people don't realize is you can actually be that without being a liberal idiot. You can be free. You can be happy. You can be open. You can be open-minded. You can be a hippie. You can do. That has nothing to do with this right here. And also a standard law, order, process, procedure, standards, principles, values, has nothing to do with that. And that's what this whole draining of the swamp was, is to get rid of this brainwashed, conditioned, replicate the deep state swamp. That's what these people are doing. And we're still there. Because it's the internet, right? It's a great when it's great, but it's not when it's not. This is great right now because we're all here together. And we're talking about things that matter. But then look at all the people out there. Look at all the liberal pages. They're so brainwashed. They're taken up for corruption. They're promoting corruption. They're defending corruption. And these people would not know the wolf if it was sitting in their living room. But they're still taken up for it because that's all they know. The gnashing of the teeth. The gnashing. What's the Bible talk about? The gnashing of the teeth. People who go to hell. All the turmoil, chaos. The Bible says, and I'm not a preacher, but it is Sunday, but the Bible does say, I didn't give you the spirit of fear, but of love, power, and a sound mind. Does love, power, and a sound mind require lies, misinformation, false information, false accusations, frame up, malice, defamation, slander, libel, fraud, and felony? And what part of laws and orders requires lies, misinformation, false information, false accusations, malice, defamation, slander, libel, malice, frame up, fraud, and felonies? Think about it. Really think about it. All I've done from day one will say, August 24, 2022, what are you people looking at? Come on, people. You can't see this? You don't see what took place on January? With passion. And it was an hour and a half video, the first one, and my second one the next night was 3.5 hours. So this clown here, you're talking about, he takes little short stuff. My first video, my first viral video, hour and a half. My second was 3.5 hours, got millions of views. The second video straight out the gate. I didn't have a platform before. I didn't have a network or anything like that. So, you know, the Texas border was your most powerful visual. And then you got community notes just this week. Those orders expired. They're regular executive orders. They don't have national emergencies attached to them. They don't expire. That's how that works. All right, so that's community notes, meaning that's people out there who did that. They put a community note. We got to stop that. I like Elon, but that shit's got to go. That's what's wrong with this nation. All right. The Texas border, they said Joe was down in Brownsville, Texas on 2 C-32s that didn't fly with a call sign. To this day, on Brownsville.gov, the town of city of Brownsville, Texas, says that Joe, the 47th president, came today. I have 3 different websites that I run. My personal websites. Rattletrap1776.com, DerrickJohnsonCountry.com, and thedocuments.info. Alright. Anytime I want to go in there and edit that, I can do it sitting right here while we're talking. I could pull up a tab, go in there and go, Derrick Jonhson has a single right now on Texas radio. Boom! Which I do. But, boom! That quick. Why does Brownsville.gov say that Joe Biden is the 47th president? This was way back in February now. Keep this in mind. Disclosure. Because he's not president. Alright, everything has to be wrong. And it has been wrong. All the uniforms around Joe have all been jacked up. They've either been mismatched, the aiguilette, badges, ribbons. Something's been jacked up on the uniform. You got Marine Corps wearing flight suits with patrol caps. Not regulation whatsoever. There's so much stuff that they show you. All right, Biden went to St. Croix again. You know what's funny about going to St. Croix is we have a court down there, district court. Kind of funny, you know. It says, I mean, what side's of that? All right, and it ain't far from Guantanamo Bay. But Joe is in St. Croix again for Christmas, walking off the aircraft on the ass end of the plane. All right, it's what they call the ass end, even though it's the front and the belly, but that's what they call the ass. When Obama went to China, that's what the Guardian, it reads to this day, Obama snubbed, had to walk off the ass end of the plane. All right, so there's that. They got Joe and old Jill walking off at St. Croix. I checked the weather down there. It's 86 degrees. What's she doing wearing a jacket and a scarf? I've been to Florida. I've been to all over the coast. Coast, you name it. When it's been 85 degrees. It don't matter how much the wind's blowing. You don't need a scarf, a wool scarf, and a big jacket in any kind of wind when it's hot. Explain that to me. They can't. These people can't do it. All right. The Texas border, President Trump told you all along about the border. Those were proclamations. Then he told you right there on the screen, on set that day, he told you it's a military operation twice. What you see right here is a military operation. All right. But to this day, the National Guard have been out of their states daily. The reserve components daily. Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. The National Guard sign up for National Guard for 1 week in a month and 2 weeks of active duty a year. The only way that they can go overseas or anywhere is to be federalized by the president. Federalization. It requires federalization. How come they're out of their state jurisdictions daily? How come they're operating daily? How come? They have to be on an order. These are things that the douchebag can't explain. These are things that they seem to like scathe over for whatever reason. They don't talk about that. Oh no. See, it shows that their motives, they just want to be famous, they just want a face, they just want popularity, they want to be, look at me, look at me. Well, they about to get some look at me again. Mess with the wrong dude, I'm telling you right now. I ain't got an image to maintain or keep up. You mess with the wrong dude. When you mess with someone with the memory I got, that's funny. Look what happened. Woo! Yes, sir. I propped my leg up, my phone dropped. But you got to see the roof of my house, which is 11 feet tall. Yeah. So, there we go. But it's still perfect because when the phone fell, I was talking about these clowns and the fall they're about to experience, so it kind of works together. You don't want to mess with my memory. I can tell you right now. Should ask one of my, somebody who tried to screw me over in a concert one time. You should ask them how that went. It didn't go so well for them. All right. So lying never goes. Lying's not a good look for anybody. Another recent proclamation. I just talked about it earlier. President Trump mentioned October the 27th at Madison Square Garden that he was going to invoke the 1798 Act, right? The Aliens and Seditions Act. And then said, get ready, Mr. Speaker. That was a proclamation. So you witnessed all this and you didn't realize that. And here's why. There's no such thing as a midterm rally. No such thing as a midterm rally. So once again, if President Trump was a former president, he'd be violating Federal Election Committee rules, election integrity, his own executive order 13848 with the national emergency, and national security. Because once again, no matter how much you would dislike the president, if Biden was real and you didn't like him, but if this would have happened with Obama or Bush or Clinton, it wouldn't matter how much you disliked them, it would still be election interference of a sitting president. That's called integrity right there, by the way. When you can sit in a neutral seat and go, okay, let's just do a column here of things that are presidential, and let's do a column of things that are not presidential. You got to be honest with that. So then you got to know some things of the past and things of that nature. That's why I can prove that Joe is not president. Because when you go to the presidential column, I can show you why, by laws and orders, he hasn't done anything. If you think he's real, I'll play devil's advocate and sit in a neutral seat. If you think he's real, he hasn't done anything. By laws and orders. All right? Not by what the media told you and all this other stuff. They had to tell you that to keep you going. If they would have stopped the world on January the 20th, 2021, and then there wouldn't have been an inauguration, and they wouldn't have done, then you would have your answer. See, this stuff is that simple that if you'd flip the alternative, if you'd flip that over, you'd see that, oh yeah, that makes sense. Because a lot of you still are not seeking to comprehend and understand what a special operation is, unconventional warfare, irregular warfare, and a lot of these tactics have already been used before in years past. More particular, World War II. Which reminds me, let me write something down really quick. Here. Now the pen don't want to work, that's okay. Airport. There we go. So the overall goal of this whole thing, the overall goal when people say, well, why would it look like this if President Trump was still president? Why would it look like this? Why would he let the economy do this? Why would it go to hell? And why this and why that and why this and why that? Because you're not studying. You're still in a normal 4-year mindset. And that's okay, because once again, you're where you are for a reason. But there is an answer to that. It most certainly is. And it ain't in clowns who get on social media and write little excerpts like this. You can't find it in clowns like that. All right? But that's what most people are looking at, because it's short, and it's short. And it's like a short answer. And it's just a short attention span. So most people gravitate towards negativity. Most people gravitate towards short answers, short attention spans, because you don't have to do much thinking. And then you see a uniform and you go, oh, well, that there Jonhson guy, he's sitting there in a cowboy hat and a polo sweatshirt, and this guy's in a uniform, and he's got active duty here and this, that. And then what happens to people? Boom. Short attention span, and then the brainwash and the conditioning, and then they don't ever seek to go read and comprehend and study. All right? So, here's that. So when you look at the overall goal of this whole thing, one, presidents and all the government was never supposed to look like this. It wasn't supposed to be dog eat dog and everybody cussing their mama and cussing their daddy and kicking their dog and trashing their neighbor's yard and all. It was never supposed to look like this. It wasn't supposed to look like soldiers in uniform saying this and saying that, and all he's trying, especially him, he's just trying to boost his secondary career. That's all it is all about. It's what this whole thing boils down to. It's all about his secondary career. It's all about him. It's not about God, service, our country, and the military. Not about that whatsoever. All right? And I know that because obviously all the evidence I have on these people. All right? And the same thing with a lot of podcasters. They'll say, oh, I just want to get the truth out there. I just want to tell the truth to people. You don't have to say that. It's like when people, when I've had interest before in females out there, they'll say, I don't care about I don't care about the music and the hits and the accolade. I just want to get to know you. No, by your admission to that, no, you actually do care about that. That's what you're saying. Because you don't have to say that. You just do it. Like if you got the truth and you have what you think are facts or factual evidence or factual information, all you got to do is put it out there. You don't have to say that. You don't have to verbalize that. There's some form of guilt there that's saying, oh, I just want to tell the truth. Just tell it then. You don't have to say that. So, our nation was never supposed to look like this whatsoever. It's atrocious what it looks like. Atrocious. On all sides. And so Republicans, you look bad. Conservatives, you look bad. All right? Y'all look bad more on laws, orders, declaration, constitution, fundamentals, values, things like that. All right? The liberals have no foundation whatsoever. They just know the word Constitution. They don't ever talk about the Declaration of Independence. They don't ever talk about the Revolutionary War. They never talk about the military. So they have no foundation. Republicans, conservatives, you have what you think is a foundation, and you have a lot of verbiage. You have a lot of common sense. There's that for sure. But it's stuff that's still topics that lead to arguments, or they lead to, butting of heads. This whole thing was to alleviate us from that. This whole operation was to rid that swamp of starting lies and starting rumors and trying to mudsling, as they call it. He grew up in a trailer park in Mississippi and he ain't qualified. And the person could have absolutely gone to Princeton or Harvard or Yale, but because they grew up in a trailer park in Mississippi, that kind of stuff is what this whole thing is to rid us from. It's also to rid us from people who think that they got to correct somebody, all right, who want publicity and all these other things. And it's not just this one soldier who does it. It's a lot of people out there They want facial recognition. They want to be somebody so bad, and they'll do it no matter what they got. Whatever they got to do, they'll do it. All right? Versus riding around in your old Ford pickup truck, beat up truck, as my song talks about the cowboys and beat up trucks. Well, I'm in my old Ford beat up truck, riding down the road. I go live. I pull over and go live just like that. Still had the vehicle on. Go live. That's the one that went viral. All right. I didn't have a platform. Didn't have anything like that. I had pages. I had social media accounts, but I didn't have a platform. Right. And I just could not. Well, then also, guess what happened? You know, I got so mad in that video. If you go back and watch it, there was a liberal who popped in. A liberal on my friend page. Now, I knew these people, and I never said anything to them personally, right? I saw their comments and their posts. I let them do what they want to do, say what they want to say. But something they said got me, and it was about the military. And I started thinking about all of our brothers and sisters in arms who have passed, and boom, that's when I went, and I kicked it in full drive. Well, that's why it matters. It's because this whole operation is to drain the brainwashing, the conditioning of the minds, remove your emotions, and get into empowering yourself. So that, like this one particular soldier, they never ever tell why Joe didn't receive everything he's supposed to receive as a president. All right, that's the neutral seat. These people never sit in the neutral seat and say, well, Joe didn't receive a traditional flight into D.C. because of this reason. He swore in at the wrong time for this reason. They never tell that, ever. And the reason why that matters so much is, once again, the chaos and the pandemonium and the dog-eat-dog that we've had in the last, especially 20 years, is exhausting. That's the exhaustion part, is that you can be a good person going, I don't want to argue, I don't want to fuss. How can we come together? How can we come to the ground of going, look, our nation functions by legislation. Now, what makes our nation so great and different from other nations that have legislation and they have parliaments and governments and things like that, what makes us unique and different is our Declaration of Independence and what it says. That's what makes us so unique and great. So how do we have so many Republicans who don't even know what's going on right now, especially Republicans? I mean, it can't get any more clear than that right there. And it's not a bad thing. It don't hurt anybody. But liberals have no foundation. They just know the word Constitution. And then they know nothing about Marbury versus Madison, 1803. Any statute that bears the appearance of a law is null and void if it doesn't support the Constitution. But the Constitution doesn't govern you and I. The Constitution has nothing to do with you and I whatsoever. It is for you and I to govern representatives to represent us. It's really that simple. But when a long train of abuses, there's your declaration. See, that declaration was before the Constitution for a reason. Abraham Lincoln made sure to tell that before he died. He had a speech about the Declaration was more important than the Constitution. Because when a long train of abuses, when all these people who represent us start doing things they ain't supposed to be doing, when they go awry, when the government don't look the way it's supposed to, we said it is their right, it is their duty. They put it in future tense always. They put it in present, but also future. There's those pronouns that all these people like to bring up. Well, let's talk pronouns. It is their right, it is their duty to overthrow such government. That's why we're here. So this whole operation is a counter-psychological operation. Every uniform they've showed around Joe Biden, there's been one thing that's been consistent. Even though the ribbon bays, what we call the ribbon bay, the patch bay, and the badges, and also the eaglet, and all these other things, even though a lot of those, they're atrocious, they're not correct. people will, on my pages, to this day, I'll see an angry face when I post that a uniform is out of whack. You should be angry facing it. If anything, just thumbs up it or love it, though. Because they're not disgracing the military, ladies and gentlemen. This is an operation. That visual shows you that this is still ongoing. And the one thing that's been consistent around Joe Biden this whole time, since January the 20th, 2017, when President Donald John Trump raised his right hand at the correct time, all right, that day, 2 soldiers were standing right behind President Trump with their headband, Judge Advocate General and Military Intelligence. Every single soldier around Joe Biden has had JAG or Military Intelligence insignia. And just because, even more so, just more fun, reserve components, the reserves only have a few roles that they do. One of those is civil affairs and psychological operations. All right. Also around Joe Biden has been civil affairs and psychological operations insignia. That's the only insignia that's been around Joe Biden every time they've showed a soldier around Joe. JAG, military intelligence, civil affairs, and psychological operations. So what you do is, like I've said, my new book, so I got part 2 coming out of The Midnight Rider Rides Again after January the 6th. Going to see what they do on January the 6th and how they decide to play all this out, which is tomorrow a week. It's pretty cool. A week to go till January the 6th, 2025. All right, which is going to be really cool. So we're going to see what that does. But in part 2, I have a question. And this is the question that everybody should ask yourself. Is this: President Trump's main mission, drain that swamp. Drain that swamp. You all chanted it. So why did you chant it if you didn't want to see it happen? Why did you chant it if you don't have the patience to watch it play out? Why did you chant that? Ye of little faith? Why did you chant that? The not so patience of Job? Why did you chant it if you didn't want to see it take place? Because that's what you've been watching. You've been watching a special operation, psychological operations, counter-psychological operations, unconventional warfare, irregular warfare, asymmetrical warfare, covert operations, overt operations, all outlined in laws and orders. Currently invoked laws and orders. All right. Let's make sure. So, how do you drain the swamp? This is the question in book 2 that I asked. How do you drain the swamp from top to bottom, effectively and efficiently, by trapping the swamp, exposing the swamp, but letting the swamp self-destruct on their own without ever firing one shot, while also maintaining civil rest and no civil war? Because that's what you've witnessed. You have watched President Trump enforce the laws. That's his main role and duty. All they had to do was enforce the laws. And then guess what happens? When you enforce the laws as prescribed on paper, same thing with you in your life. If you just be a good, decent human being in your life, if you do unto others, if you try to turn the other cheek, yeah, you're human. You're bound to do something. Like I call this dude a piece of shit. Well, a spade's a spade, but I'll have to repent for that, because as a Christian, I'm supposed to repent, and I'm actually supposed to pray for my enemy. That's what the Bible says. You're to pray for your enemy. All right? He says, revenge is mine. All right? Now, sometimes you have to show people, yeah, you do. People do need to be exposed. But am I going to hurt this person? No. Wouldn't do any good. Am I going to harm this person in any way? No, wouldn't do any good. All right. Am I going to try to find this person? No, it wouldn't do any good. But you, the people, can see the evidence, and then you can decide, okay, do I still want to follow this network or not? Because they're affiliated with a network out there that needs to be exposed. That part needs to be exposed. All right, and then you get to decide that. So, same thing with what's taking place right now. President Trump, all he had to do is enforce the laws. And then all of the people say, well, how does a secret military, how do y'all know each other? Well, when you're doing what's right and you're doing by integrity what is, okay, our foundation for one, right, legislation, and then the laws and the orders that support the Constitution, when those are the ones that are the orders and going, hey, here's your order today, and you go, that supports the Constitution. Yes, that's lawful, and I fulfill that order. If everybody is doing that, then it's reciprocal, right? And then what takes place? All of your enemy who aren't doing right, what happens to them? They get exposed. The other thing you do is you put these people on a pedestal, just like President Trump has done. That's why a lot of people have jumped ship with President Trump, because they don't realize what a special operation is. They don't know what psychological warfare is. They don't know what covert operations are. They don't know what unconventional warfare is. They don't know what irregular warfare is. They don't know what any of that is. So President Trump has put people in the spotlight, and people go, oh, that's his guy. He's the one that nominated him. He's the one that hired him. He's the one. No. They're showing you all the rings. They're exposing all the rings, because, here we go again. Ding, 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 ding. This is an operation. It's a unique operation. This has never happened in history like this before. That's why it is unique. That's why it does sound far-fetched. That's why it does sound like a conspiracy theory, right? All that stuff, right? So, President Trump puts people on a pedestal. So you enforce the law, and then you put people on a pedestal, and you make them face the people. You make them have to lie or tell the truth. All right? They have an option. They have a choice. There's a line in the sand. If you will take every person that he's put on TV or blasted them, if you will put an envisionary line in front of them that they had to choose that line, okay, it'll make sense. The same thing with like this garbage soldier that I'm talking about. All right? Same thing. If these people would just be decent human beings and do what's right, as one of my NCOs used to talk about, said all the time, integrity is not doing what's right when people are always watching. Integrity is doing what's right when people are not watching. Because if you do that all the time, when people are watching, it'll just come natural. But see, that's what these people don't do. And it's not just him, and it's not just this particular network. It's a bunch of them out there. And they're replicating the very thing that we're draining right now. They're replicating that. These are the same people who would be propositioned and be bought out. They're the same kind of people. That's the same kind of mindset. It has nothing to do with, oh, they're not CNN or Fox or MSNBC. Nothing to do with that. When those get knocked out, guess what can happen? People from the bottom rise up. That's why we have to catch them when we're down here on the low levels before they ever get those positions. That's why this is so important for people to comprehend what we have to deal with. And if you have them in your life out there, stand up, stand tall, stand firm, stand on the foundation, stand on the facts, stand on the truth. That will always come free. That will liberate you. But if you don't ever stand up, and if you don't ever fight, or if you, like I've heard before, oh, there, Jonhson, you should leave these people alone. Oh, let President Trump expose everything. That's why we got where we are. That mentality right there, if President Trump is the only one who can stand up and fight, and to think that's all the corruption we have are just the ones you saw on TV, you're absolutely out of your mind to think that. So that's why this is important. That's why intertwining what President Trump calls the weave interweaving this piece of trash person who all they have to do is just do the right thing. Just be a good person. All right? Quit. Don't use the word liar. All right? There's a few key words that you can tell if they're deep state or not. But just when they say the word liar or lies or grifter and all that, when you hear those words, deep state, automatically. They're either deep state or they're absolutely atrociously ignorant and or both. Because it's not a lie. You can be 110% wrong about something. Ladies. All right. Y'all know with your boyfriends, your significant others, your husbands, whatever. Y'all know this better than anybody. All right. Guys can be 110% wrong about something. They don't mean that they're a liar. It don't mean that they're a bad person. All right. Don't mean that. Being wrong is actually a good thing sometimes. It's the same thing as failing. It's the same thing as, losing a game. It's how you respond to the negativity. It's how you respond to the loss. It's how you respond to being wrong is what matters. And the people who raised me, my mom and dad and my grandparents, the people who raised me, my farming family, generations who are the greatest generation in the world, first off, the greatest generation as we call them, all of that, those group of people, these people were handshake people, look you in the eye, and if they were wrong or you were wrong about something, it meant more to go to them to say, hey, man, I was wrong about that. I was wrong about this or this fact. And they did not hold that on you. They actually thought more of you and your integrity to say that you were wrong about something than you being wrong. That's where we've got to get back in society with everything. No matter if it's someone that's polar opposite than you. It don't matter if they believe polar opposite than you. It don't matter. Don't worry about that part. Get back to the fact of, hey, look you in the eye, say, man, I apologize. I was wrong about this. I'm so sorry I misjudged you. Or whatever it may be. When we get back to that, when we get back to the real honesty, then we're going to flourish more than anything in the world. Because when you're acting that way in your personal life, but especially behind closed doors, wherever, then that'll replicate in the state level. Well, let's go this way. County level, city level, state level, federal. Because those levels are just titles. And they're just imageries, right? So even like the federal are put together by all the states going to federal to represent us on a state level federally. Has nothing to do with anything, the person. It's all about the person. It's all about their attitude. It's all about how they view things and things of that nature. That's what we got to get back to. And I'll never forget. I just never forget some of the things that's happened in my life where, people, I've been wrong before and I've told people, hey, I'm sorry. I was wrong about this. And those people were good, decent people, and they go, you know what? I appreciate that integrity for you to come and tell me that. I've had people go even say, man, I ain't never had anybody admit they were wrong or come back to me. That is what you call conviction. And a lot of people have forgotten the word conviction, especially Christians. Christians have forgotten the word conviction. Conviction is when you're sitting completely by yourself in the middle of nowhere in a hunting, like a tree stand or whatever, and it's weighing on your mind. You know what? I need to call so-and-so. I need to apologize to them. I need to tell them, or conviction. We don't have that anymore by the whole in societies. We don't have it because people are not trained that way. It's like a moral and a principle. All right, the Bible says, train up a child in the way he should go, he won't depart. Right? And I know it, I'm like I said, I'll preach to the choir right here. Earlier in the video, I'm calling a dude a piece of shit and all this other stuff. It's human, right? It is human. That's human nature. But at the end of the day, I'll feel guilty for it. I will absolutely feel guilty for calling someone a piece of shit. No matter how much they exemplify it, and no matter how much, I still have the compassion and the conviction to go, hey man, why are you doing this? Why are you doing this? What are your motives and intent? Why did you try to steal my federal trademark? Why did you try to frame me talking to an underage female? Why did you go try to recruit a family member and do the same thing? Why? What has that got to do with laws and orders? Okay, if I was 100% wrong about everything, what does lies, misinformation, false information, false accusations, fraud, and felony have to do with laws and orders and my First Amendment right and my First Amendment speech? And how come you didn't take all those laws and orders and break them down with the same context, but also the same in depth? How come you didn't do that? How come it's always these little things? And how come I'm seeing that, oh, you're trying to register my federal trademark. You're trying to steal my trademark. That's the stuff that don't make sense. That's the stuff that makes people do react like I reacted. Because, once again, it's the principle. Okay, if you're about people, then what does this have to do with fraud and theft and true lies? All right, that's where the word lies comes in, because it's all a lie. All right, no one knows much about me because there ain't much to really know about me. You can't dig anything up about me. That's why they got to make up lies and false information. But what does the deep state do to President Trump? Sounds about the same, don't it? Pretty close replication, right? So, why? But at the end of the day, I'm human, and I'll have to hit my knees tonight and go, you know what, God? Forgive me and help me through this. Help me find a way. Help me find a way to be more compassionate towards fools. All right, because you talk about the Bible. In the Bible, the word fool was a pretty harsh word. It's pretty close to some other stuff we say out there. So there's that. These people take up for corruption, and they represent and replicate corruption. But then, like the DOD, the Department of Defense directives, right? The most recent, June the 4th, 2024, and September 27th, 2024. The most recent executive order in our Department of Defense directives is 2020 by President Donald John Trump. One of those directives specifically says that the most recent order of succession, an order of succession was put into place in 1947. All right. Every president has had an order of succession within the federal departments and defense departments. How come Joe Biden does it? See, that's the stuff that these people don't explain. All right. Now, I don't have to call them a name to say that. How come y'all don't explain why Joe does not have a single order of succession? And how come this Department of Defense directive, this recent Department of Defense directive specifically says that the most recent executive order of succession is President Donald John Trump's? Explain that. Then the other Department of Defense directive, 5240.01, is your intelligence, all right, mixed with law enforcement. There's your proclamations again with President Trump. He told you on the debate with local police, deportations. See, everybody's looking at January the 20th as a new day, a fresh start, and it is for number 47 itself, but it's a continuation. See, that's why the dash matters. So that proclamation came in this dash. Therefore, when they get to the first day, they can keep rolling and roll right on into that operation of deportation. That's why that matters. That's why terminology matters. That's why these people out there attacking and naysayers and the doubters and all that. See, they do not take everything as a whole and show you the people because they don't know themselves. That's why they attack. That's why they spread lies. That's why they spread misinformation. That's why they put President Trump through fake trials and all this other stuff. Now, I know a lot of those were operational, but the original first 4 years for President Trump, a lot of that was real time. All right? A lot of it was. Finding out who the people were, the players are, letting them all get stirred up and running the rats out of their holes. A lot of that part was real because you had to figure out who they were and where they were going and who all was linked together. All right? And there's still some running around out there And I have good reason to believe that a lot of these people that I'm talking about right now, they're part of the low-level rings that we're trying to hide. And they ain't going to get away with it. They ain't getting away with it. They don't know who they're messing with. So the Department of Defense directive. Then you got the other one that ties into the community notes atrociously butchering that this past week. So that's why Title 50 is so important. Title 50, Chapter 33, Section 1550. That one key clause in Title 50. Title 50 is your war and national defense. Chapter 33 of Title 50 is your War Powers Resolution Act. And I was just reading that again about the War Powers Resolution Act. The president don't have to declare war for the War Powers Resolution Act. National emergencies are one of those key components of that. President Trump declared 11 national emergencies. 8 of those have been continued. 3 of those make no sense, once again, why Joe Biden, if he were real, would do that, because those 3 alone will actually prosecute Joe Biden and Hunter. Those 3 executive orders. So it makes no sense why Joe would continue those. When they had a 2-year clause, 2-year termination, all he had to do was let them expire. Because those would have expired because they had the national emergencies attached to them. All right? It's that plain and simple. So that Title 50, Chapter 33, Section 1550 is the last amendment to Title 50. This DOD directive from September 2027, September the 27th, 2024, the one that all these podcasters went out there and said that that's Joe Biden weaponizing the military to go against the people. That atrocious, and they're mainly Republicans. So we're talking about 99% of Republicans and 99% of patriots who took that DOD directive. That DOD directive has a letter in there called Letter K, and it's got 3 bullet points to it. The second one and the third one are very important. The second one says that this won't happen unless, the unless are those 2 clauses. Guess what those 2 clauses are? The second one is the War Powers Act, and then the third one is a directive by the president. It don't get any more plainer than that, because the last amendment to Title 50, Chapter 33, Section 1550, is President Donald John Trump on December the 20th, 2019. That clause says the president is to report to Congress. Well, guess what's in those DOD directives? Reports. The president's to report. Well, that's what that is. All right, then it says specifically the term regular or irregular forces. So it's not just the National Guard and Reserve components who are acting, it's the active duty who are acting. That's what regular forces are. All right, so those key clauses. But that irregular term, guess what it ties into? Title 50, but also special operations. That's what irregular forces are, because you will go read about irregular forces in the Special Operations Command that I talked about earlier, April 2016. Unconventional warfare, irregular warfare, irregular forces. There it is. There's your tie-in. That's the last amended section to Title 50. That Department of Defense directive from September 2024, September 27th specifically, says implements Title 50. Implements, pretty sure that's the same as invoking. All right, implements meaning in action. All right, and then it says Executive Order 12333, which is an executive order that bars associations, bans assassinations. Excuse me, not associations, assassinations. That Title 50, Chapter 33, Section 1550, the last amended section of Title 50, has a clause in there. It says in the first 180 days after December the 20th, 2019, and every 180 days thereafter, the president is to report to the defense committees the actions of the regular or irregular forces. and our partner forces. In the first 180 days alone, forget about the rest. In the first 180 days alone, Executive Order 13912, there's that executive order. Executive Order 13919, there's the other executive order. There's your two executive orders that invoke Title 10, Sections 12304 and 12302. President Trump was in Texas February 29, 2024. The Adjutant General reports to the state chief executive, the governor, unless the National Guard are federalized by Title 10. State of Arkansas and state of Nebraska were in Texas the week before and the week after. The only way they could be out of Nebraska and out of Arkansas into Texas, Title 10. The only two orders that are out there for you to look up, tangibly go look up, Executive Orders 13912 and 13919, that Community Notes on X has failed again. And the same thing that these people out there, these podcasters have done. They failed you, the people. Department of Defense Directive 5240.01 is not a weaponization of the military. They don't know anything about the military. They don't know anything about military laws, military orders, regulations, customs, how they pair federally, executive orders, national emergencies, proclamations. Most people, there was a senator not long ago on the Guardian or the Hill, one of those, 36 years, another Joe Biden type person, 36 years, senator, said they never heard of a Presidential Emergency Action Document, a PED, that came from the Eisenhower administration. President Trump has talked about President Eisenhower over and over and over and over and over again, and Roosevelt over and over and over and over again. So, the reserve components, they only serve one function. They're federal. They're active daily for the whole world to see. The only way the National Guard can be out of their state jurisdictions to be federalized by Title 10. And this trash soldier, I'm still going to stick to the terminology, but this trash soldier and every veteran and every memorial grave in this nation, we raised our right hand under Title 10, Section 502. So you can't have one Title 10 without the other. That's the oath. Title 10, Section 502 is our actual oath. That is the oath. When you Google that, that's going to pull up the oath. Same Title 10. Title 10 is Uniform Code of Military Justice, which is military law. It can't get any more simpler than that. Then the other thing, once again, that ties it all in is what took place on January the 20th, 2021. Which, once again, here we go. We're going to sit in the neutral seat and play devil's advocate. All right? What this piece of trash soldier and all these other people hadn't done is take, okay, like I said earlier, here's a column of things presidential. Here's a column of things that aren't presidential. So let's fill these columns. All right? Picture these as columns. All right, so these people, like this particular trash soldier, has not explained, especially because he's under Air Force regulations, all right, which this is not his role, but since he just keeps wanting to violate it, then how come he doesn't answer why Joe Biden, who supposedly got 81 million votes, which was supposed to be a record, ladies and gentlemen, 81 million votes would have been a United States record that a president would have received. President Trump is sitting right now with 76 million votes, popular votes. And there were more registered voters in 2024 than there were in 2020. But Joe got 81 million votes. Explain that. See, that's self-explanatory right there. But what liberals would do is say, oh, well, President Trump cheated in this election. I'm pretty sure if you're going to cheat, you probably would say I got 82 million votes or 83 million. I'm pretty sure you wouldn't go, 76 million and drop 5 million down. That would be the most stupidest thing in the world, but then it still wouldn't make sense. It still wouldn't matter, right? Because Kamala didn't get 76 million. So then they'd have to see how they argue. They don't have a foundation. They're saying, Kamala, stay in the race, stay in. President Trump cheated. These people have no clue what Executive Order 138480 is with a national emergency. That's the dumbest thing they could be chanting right now is to stay in the fight. Stay in it, Kamala. Kamala ain't real. She's an actress as well. All right, that's not a conspiracy theory. All by laws and orders. What you're watching is a military operation. Military government, military occupation, continuity of operations, continuity of government. All outlined with laws and orders. But you can't go look at some little trash soldier who's got 5 kids and a wife and supposed to be obligated to the United States Space Force with a little bitty tiny paragraph this big about what he's carrying around in his pants, about that long. All right, that ain't going to cut it, ladies and gentlemen. That don't cut it. All right, that ain't how laws and orders work. So there's that. So these people never explain why, especially him, Air Force, the United States Air Force, all right. Why didn't he get a traditional flight into DC on Air Force One? Obama got it. Let's just go. I'm a conservative, so let's just go with the Democratic presidents. All right. Jimmy Carter passed today. All right. I have nothing good to say about Jimmy Carter, so I won't say anything at all. All right. But Jimmy Carter. All right. Clinton. Obama. And then let's just call a spade a spade. Obama is the first color president. He's not fully black, but it doesn't matter. Let's just say that. So how come a black president got to ride in Air Force One as a Democrat and a liberal, but Joe doesn't get the traditional flight into D.C. on Air Force One? He's been, quote unquote, seen on Air Force One according to people who thinks he's real, which he's not, and that's all part of theater, but for, once again, sitting in a neutral seat for what people think they saw. He's been in an Air Force One by all visual accounts. So how come that the Air Force One obviously wasn't put down? Obviously, Air Force One ain't decommissioned in the eyes of the average what people would say. So how come Joe didn't get a traditional flight in the Air Force One? If he got the most votes in U.S. history, hey, if I was being neutral and this was a normal situation, he would deserve a flight into D.C. on Air Force One. There's no argument. That's a presidential custom. How come old Space Force dude how come he can't answer that? All right. Then Joe raised his right hand at 11:47 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, which is a violation of the 20th Amendment. So all these liberals out there yelling the 14th Amendment, 14th, use the 14th on President Trump, use the 14th. Okay, so you can talk about an amendment. You can go read a 14th Amendment. How come you didn't see what happened on January the 20th, 2021 when Biden broke the 20th Amendment? So if President Trump is guilty of the 14th, then by principle and by standard, if this was a normal 4 years, then let's go back 4 years ago to the breaking of the 20th. Because if we're going formula by formula, foundation by foundation, principle by principle, then if you want to read the 14th, then the 20th, why did he raise his right hand at 11:47 a.m. Eastern Standard Time? The 20th Amendment says the president's term shall end at noon, 12 o'clock. The successor shall then begin. That shall then is very key. Because you wouldn't want two people to get in a fight. Let's just say that two presidents got in a fight before 12 p.m. All right, the nuclear codes or something stupid or whatever. Then, yeah, is that far-fetched? Yep, but that's what it's there for. That's why it matters. That's why terminology matters. All right, then also veterans, but active duty, whatever you are, we always salute a moving flag. All right. We will always salute a commander-in-chief, but that's always been in question. And the military's had a lot of thoughts about that. A lot of you civilians don't know that. But it's always been a question, should we salute a president? Because a commander-in-chief, by definition, is when they're in a commander-in-chief role, right? Like a wartime situation. During a peacetime especially, which is the most obvious, a lot of soldiers go, why am I saluting a guy who's never been in the military? All right, that's been a question before, but put that aside, put your opinion aside on that, it doesn't matter, it's not the point. But we always salute a moving flag. Not a single National Guard saluted a moving flag that day. Why? That is military customs. All right, that's military. How come they didn't salute the motorcade, which had a moving flag on it? There's that. Also, Army Regulations 600-25, there's to be a commissioned officer present at every cannon salute. All right. Army Regulations 600-25, 2-3 cannon salutes. There's to be a commissioned officer present. How come all of those soldiers that day they show with for Biden were standing around, moving? We don't do that. None of that is military bearing whatsoever. Also that day, Garth Brooks sang Amazing Grace, the full song. Now, they didn't replicate it by Army Memorial Funeral standards because of this particular reason, but it's still an Army Memorial thing. The Army usually uses bagpipes for it, but Amazing Grace. Here's that. All right. Then, the cannons. And this is fun for me because recently, probably a year ago now, I need to go back and look at the date, there was a lady on Truth Social, another shitbag, just going to have to say, you're being consistent tonight. Active duty, said they were active duty 24 years. Their username had MAGA in it, claimed to be a President Trump supporter, but saying that I've finally got Derek Jonhson, I've busted him. Derek Jonhson is wrong because every single inauguration day, they show the laying of the wreath ceremony at Arlington National Cemetery. So see, this is how you play devil's advocate. This is how you play neutral, and you don't get your emotions involved. Here's how you put that person in their place, lawfully, but also military, again, because they're actually right, and then they also prove my point once again. See, they were so set on making me wrong that they actually are correct, 110% correct, but they also still prove me 110% correct. Boy, now that's a mouthful right there. Woo! Think about it. Now watch. This person, I just said that they're 110% correct, that every January the 20th there's a laying of the wreath ceremony, which would mean the ceremonial process of a military funeral at Arlington. 110% correct. But because she's 110% correct on that, it still makes me 110% correct, no matter how it was perceived by hearing how I explain what took place that day. Here's what I've always said. This is how I say it. This is my dialect. This is my verbiage. This is what I say. All right, there's my Southern really pouring it on right there, my Matthew McConaughey, right? Here's how I pour it. Here's how I've said it. I've said that on that day, visually, optically, that Joe Biden and the monarchy received a funeral service. All right? Well, that's putting the emphasis on, quote-unquote, Joe. All she did was put an emphasis on the laying of the wreath ceremony, disregarding Joe, disregarding January the 20th, disregarding that, going, okay, every inauguration, there's a laying of the wreath. All right, so you got to listen to the terminology, right? But it still proves me 110% correct for this one reason. Ma'am, right? That's what you do to a lady in the military. If they're an officer, I don't know if this person was an officer or not, but we're just going to pretend, just have fun. But even cowboys, the first time we see a lady in passing, what are we supposed to do? Ma'am, Right? They may not like it. They might be like, I'm not a man. They'll be like, well, you look like one. Right? But, so this is a tip of the hat to the active duty for trying to be a troll and trying to be, oh, Derek Johnson's wrong. See, these people focus on wrong versus getting things right. Not being right, but getting it right. All right, so watch this. Yes, every inauguration, there's been a laying of the wreath ceremony, which if they panned around and they show you all the things that take place at Arlington that day, you would see, cannons and things of that nature. But every president before this time period of this special operation, every single president, including President Trump on January the 20th, 2017, every single president has gone over to the laying of the wreath. But they never showed the cannons. They never show the Arlington cannons. All right? Never. I haven't seen that on there. But what they do show you are 4 cannons, which is, so this is where everybody gets confused. 4 cannons, 21 rounds. Everybody wants to use the term 21 gun salute, but never wants to go look at what a 21 gun salute is. A 21 gun salute uses 4 cannons. 21 rounds fired. That's where the term 21 gun salute comes from, is the 4 cannons. But that's where people get confused. All right, there's multiple kinds of salutes. There's 21 gun salute, there's a 19 gun salute, there's a 17 gun salute, 15, 13, 11, 7, and 5. All right, they're odd numbers for a reason. All right, but every other president, President Trump, President Obama, Bush, Clinton, Carter, all the way back to President Nixon. They don't show you any others on YouTube for whatever reason. All right, but all the way back to President Nixon. I've got it in my book. You can see it in the Midnight Rider Rides Again. All right, in there, every president has had 4 cannons on Inauguration Day in the National Capital Region. All right, 4 cannons. 4 cannons, 21 rounds fired, shots fired, is a 21 gun salute by definition. Where this person actually proved me right double, all right, is for the fact that on January the 20th, 2021, the only cannons they showed all day long for Joe Biden were the 3 cannons at Arlington that they never showed before in any other inauguration ceremony. That was the only cannon shown all day long for Joe Biden. Now, the one time reading fails you, well, I always tell people to go read, study. Where the reading fails you this time is what 47 United States Code 606 has to do with an operation, which is also psychological operations. If you went to YouTube, there's one, I think it's Tampa Bay, but Tampa has a news channel that shows the cannons at Arlington for Joe that day. Well, on the bottom it tells you 21 gun salute. It's not a 21 gun salute. That's where people struggle, is you want to argue with military personnel who can absolutely show you by customs that that is not a 21 gun salute, but also on Arlington National Cemetery, it specifically tells you the 3 volley salute is not to be confused with the 3 volley salute seen or heard at Arlington. The 3 volley salute is a military funeral honors. And we still have people who will argue with the United States veteran retired about military customs that have nothing to do with your affiliation with religion, your sexual orientation, or anything. If you were the gayest Buddhist on the planet, but you honorably served in the military and were honorably discharged with an honorable discharge or an honorable retirement, you get a military funeral service. So it has nothing to do with any kind of affiliation. Nothing. It's a custom. It cannot be argued with. Until the custom is changed and the military changes that, that is exactly what it is. So that day, the only cannons shown all day long for Joe were the 3 at Arlington. But every other president has had 4 cannons, 21 rounds fired, plus gone over to Arlington where those 3 cannons would have been, but they've never showed those before. They always just showed the 4 cannons, 21 rounds, which is the 21 gun salute. Well, guess where they were that day? The freaking media told you that day. When President Trump was riding off into the sunset, and all the Republicans and conservatives and people like these posers and brown nosers who claim to be all about the Constitution, who claim to be all about the military, who claim to be all about the military customs, who claim all this stuff, and the Republicans and conservatives who jumped ship that day, the mainstream media told you it was the official presidential salute battery, the 3rd Infantry Regiment, known as the Old Guard, that was with President Trump on January the 20th, 2021. 4 cannons, 21 rounds fired right in front of you. That was the inauguration service on January 20th, 2021. Those were the 4 cannons that have been with every other president on Inauguration Day. The 3 cannons at Arlington were the only cannons shown all day long for Joe Biden. Arlington National Cemetery.mil. The 3 volley salute is not to be confused with the 21 gun salute. The 3 volley salute seen or heard at Arlington is not, so there's 2 sentences they give you right there. Seen and heard. They tell you this on Arlington National Cemetery.mil. Whew. Things that an active duty soldier currently under oath wasting your taxpayer dollars can't explain. National Guard out of their states every day. Reserve components only serve a federal mission. They're out of their states every day. The only person who's federalized the National Guard active duty is President Donald John Trump. Executive Orders 13912, 13919. They've not been terminated. They haven't been revoked. They're still active. Airports. That's the other thing. All these airports, there's aircraft daily, weekly and daily. All these foreign entities on regular county, municipal, and regional airports. Their aircraft. There was a Dominican Republic helicopter flying the other day that I posted out of New York somewhere. The New York National Guard annual report came out not long ago. I just posted about that. It tells you straight out the gate, federalized. They're all federalized. Federalizations. It can't get any more simple than that. And how do we have active duty? And that's a hard topic to talk about because you, the people, love soldiers. You love our military men in uniform, right? It's tough. It is tough. But once again, when you exemplify, you're supposed to know military laws, orders, regulations, customs, and how they pair with federal laws, executive orders, proclamations, national mercies. But when you're in the service, that's not your duty. Your duty and obligation is to your unit and then what y'all are working on daily. Put everything else aside. Focus on what you have in your life. That's what you're supposed to focus on. And we have all these prima donnas. He ain't the only one. There's a lot of them all over TikTok. They're all in their uniform. One girl got relieved of duty. I can't remember how long ago it's been, but she was hiding in her vehicle during Reveille, right at the end of the day. She's supposed to be out saluting the flag. Pull over, get out of your vehicle, salute the flag. This clown sitting there live on TikTok or Snapchat or one of those made a video. Ha ha ha! I'm supposed to be out saluting the flag, but I'm tired. I'm not doing it. Went viral. Every veteran found out what unit she was with and called in. This person was relieved of duty. Now this clown, because he's an officer, well, his chain of command, they just think they walk on the ground, he walks on, they worship everything. They just he definitely went against chain of command. He's gone against all the orders they told him to do. Why do we still have this trash in the military? Right? Well, because we got to stand up to it. And it sucks, but I'm a veteran. So, when people want to go about uniform, well, then it goes to principle then. All right? I'm honorably retired. So what do you want to do? Right? You want to trash me? Because all I do is talk about laws and orders that help you empower yourself? Right? That's where we are. President Trump is the pinnacle. He's the high up. He's the face of this whole thing. But look at the stuff he's gone through for you. Look at the stuff that all of the people around him have gone through for you. All right? But that don't exemplify, that don't mean that we can't fight. It don't mean that we can't stand up. It don't mean that we can't do what's right. And, hey, you asked for it. Here it is. Because there's absolute proof that President Trump is a wartime commander via the 4 ways: executive orders, proclamations, national emergencies, and treaties. When you go back to the Madison Square Garden, October 27, 2024, when you go back to that speech, he specifically said this: "We are an occupied country. We will no longer be an occupied country soon. The Great Liberation starts November." He said in 9 days, the Great Liberation starts on November the 5th, 2024. He didn't say it ends. He said it starts. He didn't say the dash ends. He didn't say laws and orders will do this, that, and this, and that. No. He just said the Great Liberation starts that day. So when you go back and listen to that speech, occupied country. Now this clown that I'm talking about, and this ain't the exposure video, by the way. I've got all the evidence coming. I got more. It's a massive exposure video. But this clown had the audacity to tell people that he corrects people in the Law of War Manual. He don't correct people in the Law of War Manual. First off, he don't have any post about any of this stuff, and he's not supposed to, which proves once again he wants publicity. His secondary career is music related. He's jealous of me. Let's just be honest. All right, it shows. It's sad. It's a sickness that these people have. That's what social media has done to people. All right, it's sad. But the reason why I say that is because absolute proof. I don't like the word absolute most of the time because it's like saying something's 100% right or 100% correct. You don't want to say that. You don't want to say 100%. Say I'm 99. Don't say 100. Always leave room for error. But this is important for one reason. All the laws and orders I talk about, all of the things that Joe didn't get, Joe didn't receive, all those things. January the 20th. I mean, there's so many things that I've covered that absolutely prove that Joe is not president by laws and orders. But President Trump said we're an occupied country. The Great Liberation starts in 9 days. Those are 2 timepieces put together, timestamps. When you go to chapter 11 of the Law of War Manual, that's where you'll find occupied territory. When you think of a liberation, he said, I will restore laws and orders. Well, he suspended the Constitution, the writ of habeas corpus. He did that. Laws can prove that. Now, this video is not going to show all that, but laws can prove that. I have all that in other videos that shows where the Constitution was suspended by law for rebellion or invasion of public safety. Biological, chemical threat, border invasion. Both of those qualify for that. The Great Liberation starts January the 20th, 2021 is when he said, I will restore laws and orders. Occupied territory is in chapter 11 of the Law of War Manual. Military occupation is also in chapter 11 of the Law of War Manual. There's really no more that needs to be explained than that. The whole world has witnessed a military government, a military occupation, a continuity of operations, and a continuity of government. All outlined, very detailed, intricately, but also vastly, in multiple laws and orders. Most have been on paper already. They weren't anything new. All President Trump had to do was sign them, invoke them, declare it. It's really simple. And the whole operation was to get us to where when we leave one presidency, it is continuous into the next 4 years, the next 4 years. Because what all of us has witnessed our whole life is you'll have a president who campaigns tearing down the other party, tearing them down, mudslinging, lies, misinformation, false informations, false accusations. I mean, just a dog eat dog. What this clown has done and this certain group of people have done to me. Now, I sleep like a baby at night. Once again, this ain't some kind of worry, and I don't need any kind of consolation, nothing like that. This is all operational. It's all part of the territory. But all of these people replicate the very thing that we're leaving, and it's been drained. Very thing. Your liberals out there, I don't know. I don't know if some of them will come around or not, because they're looking pretty atrocious. But there's a lot of Republicans that look the same way too. Unfortunately. A lot of conservatives look that way. But President Trump talks positivity, which we're all supposed to do. And he says that my retribution will come through success. Right? That means the economy, obviously. But it's not just going to be another 4 years. History will account for this right here. History's going to account for it. They're not going to let this scathe under, but it's got to be where I'd say 80 to 85% of the population are receptive to hear what took place, what was a special operation, what was not real, what was real. People have to be receptive for that. Liberals aren't ready for that. Not right now. They're not ready for that part. This soldier, by all indications of his posts of the past that we found on him, he's a liberal. All right, so there's that. That's part of his problem right there. He's a liberal. But liberals have no foundation. They're a grab-and-go society. They're it's just, I call it a Build-A-Bear society. They have no foundation whatsoever. But when you, the people, empower yourself with the laws and the orders of this land that support the Constitution, all right, and support our foundation, support our military, but specifically our Declaration of Independence, when you know that, and you just be a decent human being, do unto others, treat people the way that you will do unto others. Treat people the way you want to be treated. Make that reciprocal. Mind your own business. Don't be worried about who's pulling up in your neighbor's yard at 3 a.m. Don't worry about that stuff. Don't talk about them. They won't talk about you. All right? But even if they do talk about you, don't worry about it. That's why I love one of Aaron Rodgers' professional quarterbacks' quotes recently is that most of these people, you wouldn't even ask advice from. So why do you care? Now, situations like this that I'm about to expose, they're networks. And there are people who are trying to be, and a lot of them do have y'all hooked. There's a lot of people out there that have you hooked. And at the end of the day, you want to try to use your gut instinct versus looking at, now why would they replicate the swamp? Why would they do that? That's where discernment, man, I'm telling you, there's 3 key components of all this. Spiritual warfare, information warfare, and discernment. Laws and orders do not require lies, misinformation, false information, false accusations, frame up, malice, defamation, slander, libel, fraud, and felony. It don't require any of that on any level. Now, misinformation, sometimes if it's a military misinformation, something like that. if it's something psychological operation, but not from low-level seeds. No way, Jose. No, it don't work like that. So this whole operation is to drain the swamp, to get rid of anything that replicates that. That is exactly what the deep state does to anybody that they think they're losing their rights to or their grounds to and all this stuff. They don't even have a, first off, they don't have a foundation, but the one who barks the loudest in the past has been the one that's had the platform. We've let all the participation trophies get up, and the ones that bark the loudest, we've allowed them to control us. They're a lot smaller than us, but it's because people are afraid to stand up and call out people. It's one thing to be dramatical. It's one thing to just call someone trash and call someone this and without any facts. That's drama. That's petty. That's keyboard warrior type stuff. That's that. But when you have actual facts, evidence of people committing lies, misinformation, false accusations, fraud, frame up, which is a felony in most states. All right, when you have that, that has to be exposed. And those are the people who are misleading all the Americans. They're the ones that are wolves in sheep's clothing. They're the ones with the sly tongues that actually deceives you and tricks you. That's why we have history. Jim Jones, drink the Kool-Aid. I mean, I'm not trying to make fun. I'm not trying to make light. But that's where we got the term drink the Kool-Aid from. David Koresh, right, out in they called it Waco, Texas for a while because of that situation. That's why we have situations in history, because we let people who were the real cultish people, we let those people allow people to just keep feeding to that trash. These same people call me and you a cult. And they don't realize at the end of the day that, once again, laws and orders of the land. All I've done is take all the laws and the orders with my brain, the capacity I have to put it all in, dissect it, lay it all out in the blueprint. I know a lot of you hate to read. Trust me, I know. I'm still going to tell you to go read. But I know a lot of you don't like to read. A lot of you are more audio-based. I am too, a lot of ways, depending on what it is, because I do have a great memory. I can listen versus read better, but I do like to read because I want to see it. I want to know what's there. But I know a lot of you don't like to read. However, it is there. That's how you empower yourself. And these people are not doing that. And they need to be called out. Now, we have, let's see, tomorrow is the, what? Let's see, we're already there. So the December the 30th. So a week from today, Monday, is January the 6th, right? So it's going to be a big day in history. I don't know what they're going to do exactly. I have a good inclination, but we ain't got long to go. But history will account for this. But you, the patriots, you, the conservatives, the Republicans, you guys and gals out there, you have to identify this stuff. We cannot let the deep state replicate and get back in and take root and take hold, because if you give them an inch, they'll take a mile. We cannot do that. We just can't do it. So sometimes you do have to stand tough, stand tall, say some things that sometimes people don't like. It's not really popular. Sometimes you just have to say it. It is what it is. But I know one thing. I've never lied. I've never lied to anybody, but I've also never sat back and tried to come up with a lie. I've never tried to frame people. I've never said. I don't know how you could even sit down and go, you know what? I'm about to get this person. I don't understand that lifestyle. Period. I don't have time for that kind of stuff in the first place. Like, even with what my little things I do in my life, I don't have time for petty nonsense garbage. But also, we're talking about crimes. It's a crime. I just don't want to spend $25,000 to go get a federal attorney because it's a federal thing. I don't want to spend 25. So we go to social media, right? That's why it's good when it's good, but it's bad when it's bad. But it's bad for them, not me. So if you'll just be a good, decent human being, and you'll go by the old golden standard, you'll do unto others, but also make that reciprocal. If everybody will practice that and mind your own business, and you won't be minding mine like Hank Williams used to sing. I grew up not far from Hank Williams, part of my life. Not far at all from Georgiana, Alabama. All right. I drive down Hank Williams Memorial Highway all the time. I drive down Hank Williams Road all the time. All right. If everybody would just mind your own business, you won't be minding mine. Do unto others. Do your own thing. Mow your own yard. Stay in your own lane. And do what you're supposed to do daily versus trying to, whatever it is. I can't even think of the word. But malice, all this other stuff, it's insane, man. I mean, it's crazy. Who would have ever thought that? But people do it. So they got to be called out for it. But these people never show you extensively, that's the word I was looking for earlier. They never show you extensively like I do how it's not. Because you know why? That ain't how the laws work. That's why they can't do it. Because that's not how it works. So, anyways, I'm going to post this on Rumble. I only have one Rumble. A lot of people still following fraudulent pages out there. One Rumble. But I highly encourage everybody to go watch the video again that I posted on most of my pages. I'll post it up on Facebook again about this particular soldier. I still believe that everybody still needs to flood in and call his unit. He's obviously still violating the direct orders he was told to leave me alone, leave my name out of his mouth, and do what he's supposed to do. All he's doing is wasting your taxpayer dollars. All right, so I still highly recommend that, but I'm also about to release another video, and only I know when that's going to drop. All right, I've asked for a formal public apology from these people for you, not me. It ain't going to do anything to me. I already know their intent and their motives. I'm asking them for a formal public apology for you, the people, because it's you who get damaged. It's you who gets hurt. It's you who has to decide, I don't know what to... Because the ones who aren't reading the laws and orders extensively, and you're just going with, oh, this guy versus this guy, or this role versus this role, or this position, then it's you, the people, who suffer. So I'm going to drop it. I'm dropping everything. All right. And there was a particular quote-unquote family member who also created a lot of agony for my mother, my dear sweet mother. There's one thing that you ain't going to do. You're not gonna hurt my family, and you're not gonna hurt my mother. All right. So you want to call me a mama's boy? That's fine. That's right. Because I will whoop somebody's ass over my mama, and that's just how that is. That's how the South works. So if you don't like slang, I'm not apologizing because I'm not gonna apologize for her. I've watched her go through the stuff. She understands publicity, but she also says you're my baby, and nobody knows my baby like a mama. That's what she says all the time. And so it is what it is. So when these people try to include my mother in this shit, that's when the bull, I'm sharpening my horns. All right. So these people did that. They tried to include my mother in all this. They took my mother and grandmother's photos and put lewd stuff all over the internet. But they also tried to recruit a quote unquote piece of shit family member as well. And I'm not backing down from that either. They bald-faced lied when they were... Obviously, they're going to lie. But when they were confronted on this, they lied. So, I hate to do stuff like this, but these people never show by laws and orders why and how President Trump isn't the dash. They attack me constantly. And it's just time. It's time. Everybody sees the full truth. The first video didn't have everything in it. The second one... it's going to have enough. It's only 7 minutes long. And if you'll just take your thumb and pause it, you'll be able to see enough of this trash and these evil, dirtbag, scum people who need to be exposed. And that's what's going to take place. And only I know when I'm going to drop that video and all of the evidence, how they tie in. But, I mean, if they watch this video, they got time. they got a little bit of window of time to issue a formal public apology to the people. Not to me, to the people. Dear patriots, we judged this situation wrong. We were wrong, and blah, blah, blah. Because they're all linked together. They all recruited this soldier, this particular soldier that I'm talking about, the Space Force dude that a lot of you have already seen the video on. This particular network recruited him. They're all tied in. And the bad part is they're actually tied to a particular general out there that ain't looking so good. So why is that? Why are they all tied to this one particular general? Weird. That's so weird to me. They're all civilians, so they're not actually military. So that's what's weird. So anyways, I know that I know, and I know what I know. So these particular people, though, they're not a part of the operation whatsoever. They're all low-level dirtbags who want money. See, I haven't been bought throughout all this. You know, I've actually been, oh man, you talking about propositions? $5,000, $10,000 a month. I've been propositioned by everything and everybody. I could be making $10,000, $15,000, $20,000 a month just because of the eyes that are on my page if I were to put ads up. Have you seen any ads on my pages? Now, Rumble, I think Rumble has ads that they add because that's part of their platform. But have you seen me post any ads? Have you seen me post anything about, oh, come over here and get your insure today, get your dentures, you know, and all this, that, and other, and all your butt's hurting? You want some butt cream? Well, we got some root oil juice from down here in Podunk, Buckatona, Mississippi, and you rub it on your little hind end, and it just treats it just like poison oak, and it goes away. You just get it right here at this link right here. Just click here and you put in promo code, my ass is hurting, and you get 15% off. Have you seen me do any of that? I sit on my time. My mother, my father, my friends, my family have sacrificed because I do this on my time. Ain't nobody paying me to do this. So that's what makes it even more hilarious that these people have been caught in a web. Fraud, lies, frame up, all of you linked together because you don't even know one simple law, much less all of them. So when I get this posted, I'll be tagging them again. So they will actually hear that they need to put out a formal public apology. So I have everything. Let me do something really fast. Remember the Trump dance? You know the Trump dance, right? 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 Young man, there's no need to get down. Right? So let's just do another replication of President Trump. Just because I'm feeling a little Stephen Baldwin here. I'm feeling a little bit of like, you know, all the stuff he does, it's so humorous. Run, Forrest, run. Right? So when they watch this, remember what President Trump said in 2020? We have it all. We've caught them all. Well, guess what? I have everything. Everything. That shows all of you linked in. And you got 2 moles in your group. They say criminals are the dumbest. Well, guess what? 2 moles gave up the ship. You might need to go check out the Navy. They got this little thing that said, don't give up the ship. Well, 2 of your moles gave up the ship. And one of them didn't realize they were giving up the ship. One of them actually was so dumb and feeling guilty that they actually emailed my attorney the day before you tried to steal my trademark. Email my attorney? These people are that stupid, but they're still tied into a network. 1 mole at the network. Now, I don't think it's all of them over there at the network, but I think it's just one. And representing the network. But it's actually 2 of them over there. that one of them gave up the ship and hung them all. Damned them all. Hadn't talked to this person in 2 years. I put that video out last year. Ain't talked to them in a year. At that point, they were texting instantly, giving up the ship. Got all the text messages. All of it ties in. It just fits together like a puzzle. Lie, 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 lie. Frame up, frame up, frame up, frame up. Premeditated, prefabricated. Lie, 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 lie. But then, because I have a little Native American in me, I sat back and I watched all this trash go on for the last year and a half. I took all the evidence. I had spies get in these groups. I had people working, getting all the messages, acting like one of them, and getting it all. Right? That's who you mess with. That's who you actually mess with. So the general probably needs to get rid of some of you losers and get me on his team. Because I'm the one who can also be a master at 5G warfare. I'm also gifted in that. And that's who you mess with. And if you'd like to see something, I'm going to walk right out of this room right in there. And I'm going to go to that bed tonight and I'm going to sleep like a little baby, like a little squirrel. And I'm going to curl up down there, just like Stephen Baldwin probably does. And I'm just going to curl up like a little baby. And I'm going to sleep like a baby because I have everything on every single one of you. Everything. You're liars by the definition, because I hate that term. I actually do hate that term. But I have the evidence that proves you're liars. I have evidence that proves you're pathological liars. I have evidence to show that you're antagonistic narcissists. All right, I have all the information to show that you're the actual frauds. I have everything that shows that you're a danger to society. You're probably dangerous to your spouses, to be honest. You're also probably dangerous to your children. You probably are susceptible to being bought out by people who would actually traffic. You probably are some of them. Because all your traits and everything that I have that you try to do to me for simple laws and orders have all the evidence. And you all link together. So you got a lot of explaining to do to a lot of people. And I'm going to email it to everybody. I'm going to text message it to everybody. And a lot of you try to go to my followers and you try to message every one of the followers, especially the fake page you created with my name. You try to steal my brand, right? And you try to intercept all these people. You try to message them stuff. Guess what I'm going to do? I got a whole pool of people who's going to be messaging all of those people these videos of all of your crimes, all of your fraud, all of your lies, all of your attempt to premeditate and prefabricate a felony. So, you made your bed. Now you get to sleep in your bed. And when you're a liar, what you're probably going to do, this is public, what they call public disclosure, because I've already put it out there and multiple times. There's multiple public disclosures where I've caught you all. And then when I put the public disclosure out, you went and did something. Well, this is public disclosure that if I'm harmed in Miami, when a lot of you are supposed to be there this May when I'm in Miami, this is public disclosure. If I'm harmed, ladies and gentlemen, these people did it. All right? If I'm poisoned, which I've been poisoned before by one of these people, I can prove that. All right? That I have not also put out, but I have me and about 5 others, and I also have witnesses that knows that every single one of us were deathly sick after one of these events with these people. All right, so if I get in that same situation with 106 degree temperature, these people did it. All right, if I end up dead, these people did it. All right, now I'm pretty smart and I'm pretty savvy, and I have ways, all right, and keep my head on a swivel. But if I ended up dead, these people did it, all right, because they're that low level, they're that jealous, and they're that evil. If they'll do all the stuff they try to do to me, that's how sick these people are. And they're all linked together. Again, they're all linked together. So this is public disclosure. If something happens to me, these people did it. If another lie comes out, if more misinformation, false accusations, false information comes out, these people did it. Because I also have proof that these people hacked my computer way back in the same time period. All right, of all of this shit is what you could call it. All this stuff came out about underage girls and all this shit. The same stuff they do to everybody else with President Trump. It's the same replication. They're the same fiddle. It's the same thing. These people, if they do anything else, if they put a lie out there, it's all a lie. It's all fraudulent. Because that's what they do. These narcissist, trash people, they can't stand on a foundation because they never had a foundation. The very thing they started with was a lie. And it's all fraudulent, premeditated, which shows intent and motives. I have all the intent and all the motives. The Space Force dude links with a certain network out there. And I've already called them out one time on X, so it's no secret who they are. All right? But they're all linked together. And they recruited this guy. So it's up to you, the people, still. You got to be diligent. Same thing. Diligent. Call and heckle the hell out of his unit and also out of Inspector General's office. All of them. When you flood these people, when you flood their phones and emails, it does work. All right? And that's our due diligence. That's what we're supposed to do. And this person is on your taxpayer dollar and was given a direct order from a chain of command back in February to stand down and to not do this and to not do that, and they're still doing it out there to this day. So that's what made me go look at something, and I saw, oh, he didn't follow a direct order. Then I found the mole. I went and found the mole, found how they all went together, and I'm like, wow, okay, so then this and that. Then when I put the timeline together, it's so tight of a timeline, you can't make it up. And this particular person at this network is the mole, and he's the sole reason that this whole trash has existed. Outside of that, I haven't had much resistance outside of these key people. I've had a few, but it ain't been like this. And the reason why it's bothersome to me is because of, once again, I did not tell anybody that because I'm not a dramatical person. But me and my crew got deathly sick after one of these events. And it don't look good on these people whatsoever. So I'm going to bed now and I'm going to sleep like a baby. But all of my direct links, Linktree, LINKTR period, EE/1776 Nation, has all my links on there. I kept my TikTok page up, even though it's deleted and banned because they can't handle laws and orders. All right. But I kept it up. That way you know that if there's another there is a TikTok out there that's got like 20,000 followers. It's not me whatsoever. They're messaging people. They're frauds and scams just like these clowns are. Just another kind of way. I don't message you about QFS, your money, your wallet. None of that stuff. I don't have time for that. All right. So Linktree, LINKTR period EE/1776 Nation. No spaces, no underscores, no periods, no nothing. That brings up all of my social media. If I don't have an account up there, then it's probably not my account. I have a backup Instagram that I started recently. It's called Official 1776 Nation. A lot of people are following that. Yes, that is me. It's not on my Linktree yet, but it don't need to be right now because I'm not posting on it. That's how, I look at other stuff. All right. Then, I do have a backup Telegram. It's Rattletrap 1776 Nation, I believe. but it's a backup. I don't ever use it. I just started those just in case whenever Facebook deleted my first account because it was 17 years old. Go figure. All right. Then I thought, well, if they start their shenanigans, some of these other platforms might do it too. The only ones that's done it is obviously TikTok and Facebook. But if it ain't on that link, it is probably not mine. Like I said, I have one private Facebook account that I started that nobody knows about. And I give it to people who I absolutely love, who when they want to get directly to me, if they can't get me on my number, then they can go to it. Nobody else knows about it. All right. Barron Trump, a lot of people have accounts just like that. All right. But if it ain't on that link tree and I ain't told you about it, it ain't mine. Stay away from it. All right. But also discernment. You got to be careful who you follow out there. This is most certainly an operation taking place. 100%. He gives you the visual. He tells you all the time. But he ain't the only one who goes through trash. And he's not the only one who can stand up to all this bullcrap. We all have it in our lives at some capacity. And sometimes, like buddies of mine from the group Little Texas. Shout out Dwayne. Shout out all the boys from Little Texas. Sometimes you got to kick a little. You got to cause a stir. You got to make some noise to be heard. So that's what's taking place right now. Because sometimes when you take too much crash and all the other stuff and you don't stand up, then what? Then it looks like you're a coward. Then it looks like you don't want to fight. So if there's any one song I would also leave you with right now, go listen to Kenny Rogers' song, Coward of the County. Yeah, you could have heard a pin drop when Tommy stopped and locked the door. And when he turned around, not a Gatlin boy was standing. Said, this one's for Becky, as he watched the last one fall. Now, I'm not going to be hurting anybody, once again, virtually. But when I drop this video and I show all this trash that these people were trying to do, those who still follow this network, I question